We begin with a dramatic development that is sending shockwaves across the continent, as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is escalating at an alarming rate, with Russian forces continuing to engage with Ukrainian troops, resulting in increased tensions and instability in the region, and the situation is becoming increasingly dire by the hour, with the risk level now at a high, and the potential for further escalation is very real, and we are seeing a significant surge in fighting and violence, which is causing widespread concern and alarm, and the international community is on high alert, as the conflict is having a profound impact on the region, and the world is watching with bated breath, as the situation continues to unfold. Moving to the background of this crisis, it is essential to understand the complex web of events that led to the current situation, and we need to go back to the early days of the conflict, when the Russian-backed separatists first began to clash with Ukrainian forces, and the situation has been deteriorating ever since, with both sides suffering heavy losses, and the conflict has been fueled by a mix of historical, cultural, and economic factors, and the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 marked a significant turning point, as it led to a major escalation of tensions between Russia and the West, and the European Union imposed sanctions on Russia, which had a significant impact on the Russian economy, and the situation has been further complicated by the involvement of other key players, including the United States, which has been providing military aid to Ukraine, and the conflict has become a major point of contention between the US and Russia, with both sides engaging in a war of words and imposing sanctions on each other. Turning now to the current situation, the conflict is escalating rapidly, with reports of increased fighting and potential advances by Russian-backed forces, and the Ukrainian military is struggling to hold back the Russian onslaught, and the situation is becoming increasingly dire, with civilians caught in the crossfire, and the humanitarian crisis is deepening, and the international community is calling for an immediate ceasefire, but so far, the fighting continues, and the European Union is imposing sanctions on Belarus, citing concerns over human rights and democracy, and the country's relations with the West are continuing to deteriorate, amidst the broader geopolitical tensions in Eastern Europe, and the United States is imposing sanctions on Russian officials in response to the conflict escalation, which is further straining relations between the US and Russia, and the situation is becoming increasingly complex, with multiple players and interests involved, and the stakes are high, with the potential for further escalation and even a wider conflict. In a significant development, the key actors in this conflict are becoming increasingly entrenched in their positions, and the Russian government is determined to achieve its objectives in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian government is equally determined to defend its territory, and the US and the European Union are providing support to Ukraine, while also imposing sanctions on Russia, and Belarus is becoming increasingly isolated, as the international community condemns its human rights abuses and authoritarian crackdowns, and the key players are engaging in a complex game of diplomacy and geopolitics, with each side trying to outmaneuver the other, and the situation is becoming increasingly tense, with the potential for miscalculations and unintended consequences, and the key actors are aware of the high stakes, and they are proceeding with caution, but also with determination, and the outcome is far from certain, and the situation is fluid and dynamic, with multiple scenarios and possibilities. The economic and military dimensions of this conflict are also significant, and the stakes are high, with the potential for a major war in Eastern Europe, and the conflict is already having a significant impact on the global economy, with trade and investment being affected, and the military dimensions are also significant, with the potential for a major escalation, and the US and the European Union are providing military aid to Ukraine, while Russia is providing support to the separatists, and the conflict is becoming increasingly militarized, with the potential for a wider conflict, and the economic and military dimensions are closely linked, with the conflict having a significant impact on the global economy, and the situation is becoming increasingly complex, with multiple players and interests involved, and the stakes are high, with the potential for a major war, and the international community is calling for restraint and diplomacy, but so far, the fighting continues, and the situation is becoming increasingly dire. Intelligence suggests that the US will impose additional sanctions on Russian officials and entities this week, in response to Russia's ongoing aggression in Ukraine, with a confidence level of 80%, and analysts anticipate that the Russia-Ukraine conflict will experience a significant escalation this week, with reports of increased fighting and potential advances by Russian-backed forces, with a confidence level of 90%, and the probability is high that the US will announce Additional military aid to Ukraine this week, in response to the ongoing conflict and Russian aggression, with a confidence level of 70%, and the European Union will likely impose additional sanctions on Belarus this week, in response to the ongoing human rights abuses and authoritarian crackdowns, with a confidence level of 80%. And these predictions are based on a thorough analysis of the situation, and the confidence levels are based on a careful assessment of the available information. In a significant development, the global impact of this conflict is also significant, and the situation is being closely watched by the international community, and the conflict has the potential to have a major impact on global stability and security, and the situation is already having a significant impact on the global economy, with trade and investment being affected, and the conflict is also having a significant impact on the global balance of power, with the US and Russia engaging in a major struggle for influence and power, and the situation is becoming increasingly complex, with multiple players and interests involved, and the stakes are high, with the potential for a major war, and the international community is calling for restraint and diplomacy, but so far, the fighting continues, and the situation is becoming increasingly dire. Looking ahead, the situation in Europe is likely to continue to deteriorate, with the conflict in Ukraine and the tensions between Russia and the West continuing to escalate, and the international community will need to remain vigilant and engaged, to prevent further escalation and to promote a peaceful resolution to the conflict, and the situation will require careful monitoring and analysis, to understand the complex dynamics and the multiple players and interests involved, and the stakes are high, with the potential for a major war, and the international community will need to work together, to promote stability and security in the region, and to prevent the conflict from spreading to other parts of the world. Finally, we invite our viewers to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates and analysis on this developing story, and to comment on our videos, to share their thoughts and insights on the situation, and we appreciate the feedback and engagement from our viewers, and we will continue to provide in-depth analysis and updates as the situation continues to unfold.